Hey, greetings, friends. I know. The semester just finished. The last thing that you want to worry about is CMIN 310. I get it, and I can definitely empathize with you. However, here I am. I've been working diligently on it. I'm hoping to have everything that you're going to need by about the first week of June. So I'm going to be working hard throughout May in hopes that eventually they're going to open up the lakeside so that at some point I can go sit on the beach by the lake. That's the hopes anyways. But I know that's not going to be in May, so I'm going to push through over the next couple of weeks and put as much information in your hands as possible. As you know, I've been tasked with working through the curriculum of CMIN 310, which I'm very excited about this course. It's a course that I've been working to develop for the last couple semesters, and a course that I think really is going to help our students imagine their lives outside of all of that in this multicultural, pluralistic world in which we live, and one that as they step out of the bubble of all of that, they're going to experience at a whole other level. So CMIN 310 is called Christian Living, and I have created for you a folder within the folder that I shared with you. And if you go to the CMIN 310 310 folder that I shared with you, you can find a folder that specifically says Section 1, Story-Formed People. This is the first lecture set. So let me give you a little bit of a snapshot on how 310 is broken down for my course. It's broken up into basically 6 segments. The first 3 segments set up the last 3. And so each segment will have its own folder. So Section 1, Story-Formed People, is the first lecture set, and that will actually cover the first few weeks, okay? Now, I wanted to create a one-stop shop for you. So basically what I've done here is I've uploaded all the articles that we will read, all the videos that we will watch. I have given you an example of the teaching guide that I use. The first chapter of the book that I'm writing for this course is in there, and then the PowerPoint that I've created is in there as well. And much of this has been created just in the last few days because I want to get this stuff to you as quickly as possible so that together, collaboratively, as faculty working to teach this course, we can ensure that this course looks like and is designed the way that we feel most appropriate for our students. But what I wanted to do here is I wanted to just give you a brief snapshot, hearing from me, listening to me, so that you know the heart behind what I'm developing, okay? So I wanted to start out with just sharing with you and reminding each of us of what exactly the course description is. So CMIN 310 is, and it says this, and this is in your PowerPoint, so if you want to go to your PowerPoint, it's right there. This course assists the students to think critically about matters of Christian faith and theology in a multicultural, pluralistic context. Recognizing the increasingly post-Christian context of North America, students are going to be challenged to integrate personal faith, their vocation, and theological convictions in a world of diversity and plurality. That's really what students will be anticipating as they arrive in our course. And then I wanted to just share with you a few of the assumptions that inform how and why I do what I do with this course, okay? Now, you're going to pick up a lot of that if you read that first chapter of the book that I'm writing. That's in your folder. You're going to hear a lot of this from me. But I wanted also the students to understand what the assumptions of this course were. So the first one is the world that we live in is different from the world that many of our students' parents and grandparents grew up in. So there was assumptions about faith, religion, whatnot, homogeneity, really, in terms of many of their parents and grandparents' lives that they could make. But our students can't make those same assumptions anymore. The world has shifted, it's changed, it's become a globalized world. Now, I understand, given the current pandemic, we're not really sure what that's going to look like, but what we want to do is prepare our students for this return back to normal, this recognition that the world that they are living in and are moving into after graduation is a world that is going to be wrapped in difference. So the second assumption is this: words like multiculturalism, pluralism, post-Christendom are going to increasingly play a role in their post-Olivet Nazarene University life, and we want to prepare them for that. Where you live and work will be marked by difference, or in theological terms, we often say will be marked by our engagement with the other, but I wanted to talk about the way in which difference shapes our perspectives. Living in difference requires the character traits of humility and empathy to ensure that we are serving as bridge builders and not barriers to meaningful relationships, and I think is that super important. as gospel heralds, as agents of hope, as ambassadors of reconciliation, I think it's important for Christians to recognize that there are certain ways in which we carry ourselves into this already hostile and divided world in which we live in that can serve to create bridges between people. But much of that is characterized by the kind of virtue that we carry in our bodies and the way we engage people regularly. And we're going to, I think in this course, we're going to help to equip them with some tools that will help facilitate that bridge building rather than the polarization and the divisiveness that our culture is currently enmeshed in. Living in difference requires us to understand our stories and the limitations those stories impose on our perspectives of others. Again, I think that's a really important thing for us to understand, is the significance of self-reflection, of understanding who I am, what do I believe, what is my story, and how does that shape my engagement with the others. We're going to walk them through that process. For the Christian living in difference, it requires us to learn how to hold in open palms our convictions and commitments. So living in this multicultural, pluralistic world doesn't mean we abandon our convictions and commitments. What it does is it means that we hold them in open palms instead of closed fists where we're already poised to fight and defend ourselves. How do we live in a non-threatened posture so that we can be makers of peace? Blessed are the makers of peace, is what Jesus says. And I think there is a call to that within the context of this class. And then for non-Christians, living in difference requires us to develop a deeper appreciation for those who don't see the world as I do. We need to recognize that in these courses, some of these students are not followers of Jesus. And so we want to create space for them to wrestle with their own stories and the story of Christianity as we move them through. In lecture set 1, we want to set the stage for this. So we talk to them about being story-formed people, helping them understand that we really organize our lives, make sense of our lives, make our lives meaningful based upon the stories that we embody, the stories that we live in, the stories that we inhabit, right? And we talk about the nature of those stories and how those stories organize our relationships, how those stories are worked out personally, communally, and how we have these meta, overarching stories that seem to shape our perspectives in broad and umbrella-like ways. And then we introduce them to a diagram that you're going to be utilizing throughout this course. It's a diagram I'm developing specifically for this book and some other writing that I'm doing, in which it invites students to realize that much of the divisiveness and disagreement and problems that we have is really rooted to our lives above the line. And you'll see this in the diagram. The world where actions and behaviors, where the immediately observable experiential world that we live in is recognized. But in order for us to get beyond those sort of shallow, surfacey disagreements, we have to go below the line. Below the line is where the deeper stuff of life is found, the worldviews, values, fears, and aspirations. And for us to go from above the line to below the line, it requires empathy and humility and our capacity to both understand our stories and then also to be able to listen to the stories of others, because those stories really translate what's below the line into the above the line actions, attitudes, and behaviors. But then we also need to understand that all of this is being worked out against the backdrop of our cultures, and there are moral foundations that shape how we understand what we believe to be what is good, right, true, good, and noble. And again, all of this will become clearer as you read the first chapter of the book, as we work through the course material throughout this, and I'm not going to work you through all of the material in this first lecture set because you've got a lot of information there. What I wanted to do is give you a snapshot. Then I introduced them to this idea that because we understand our stories serve to shape the limitations or how broadly we're able to embrace the stories of others. So as Christians living in this world, we can't immediately engage everyone as though we're the only ones that have the truth, that we talk, we don't listen, that we are there to solve their problems. We have to learn how to move empathetically and compassionately into the lives of others, where we settle in and learn how to become good neighbors. And recognizing that if we just hold on to our stories tightly, again with closed fist, or we believe that our truths are like a Jenga tower where if you pull out one block, the whole thing will come stumbling down, we will be defensive, we will be militant, we will be extremist. And I think the world is calling us to a different kind of behavior in this utterly divided world. And so what we talk about is, what does it look like to move into a mature hermeneutic in which we learn how to interpret people's stories in light of self-reflection, as light as the limitation of our stories, in light of the implicit biases that we have, while also holding on in faith to our commitments and convictions that shape and form our lives in meaningful ways, not as a Jenga tower, but as a web, because if you pluck a little piece of the web, the whole web doesn't come down. Whereas if you pull out the wrong block of the Jenga tower, the whole tower comes down. So what we want to do is help our students begin to think through and articulate how do we begin to understand our lives, either in faith or out of faith, in this multicultural, pluralistic world, where we lay down some of the defensive postures and the movements towards divisiveness and volatility, and move towards compassion, empathy, and peacemaking as heralds of the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Living this compelling Jesus life in a world of difference, in a world where we engage difference regularly. This sets us up moving into section 2, which I'll be working on the next few days, in which we start to explore the religious meta-narrative, the religious story, and how religion shapes people's lives, people's resistance to religion, and then ultimately people's rejection of religion, and why that becomes a part of the story that's being worked out in the lives of these students as they move out into the world beyond all of that. And we're also going to talk then in section 3 about multiculturalism and pluralism and the impact that that has on the way in which students understand their Christian faith in a world that has vying claims for truth and truthfulness. What does it look like to move out of a simply propositional truth into an embodied truth of really what I consider to be bodily following Jesus, this compelling Jesus that I think if we follow him compellingly, people are inclined to want to know more about the one that we are following. We'll get more into that in the later on in the lectures. Hopefully this just gives you a little bit of a snapshot of my heart behind this course, kind of where we're headed, but these folders are going to be your one-stop shop. And as I complete a folder, I will send you an email to let you know so that you can begin to pursue those folders, look through them. Right now, the folder number 1, the one that is labeled Section 1 Story Formed People, it's basically done. So you can get there and start jumping in and rolling through that material when you've got time. Again, I know we just finished the semester. Last thing you want to do is think about this stuff. But here I thought I'd make this available to you. Have a great couple days and few weeks, and I'm thankful that I get a chance to work with all of you.